Welcome back to Forecast Earth from the International Home Builder Show here in Orlando, Florida. I'm Natalie Allen. Our next story is about a man who doesn't build buildings, but the stuff that goes inside them. He's in the carpet business, which doesn't have what you'd call an excellent reputation for environmental consciousness. Think piles of old carpet in landfills. But Ray Anderson is nothing if not a trailblazer. He built a billion-dollar company by being one of the first in this country to see the potential of carpet tiles. Now he's making that company more profitable and even more cutting edge by turning it green.
Thank you.
Ray Anderson is a dreamer. He started Georgia-based Interface Carpets in 1973 after a long career in textiles, helping to bring the carpet tile trend to offices and homes around the country. Today, stock in Interface is publicly traded. With sales in 110 countries, the company has a billion-dollar bottom line and Ray Anderson a new calling.
The environment is in our DNA now.
Anderson and his 4,000 employees are now on the cutting edge of green manufacturing, in part due to pressure from his customers.
Our customers began to ask a question in the summer of 1994. What's your company doing for the environment? We had no answers. The real answer was nothing, except obey the law, comply.
But over the last 14 years, Anderson has done far more than just comply. His goal now, to eliminate any environmental damage done by his company by the year 2020. And that means doing things a little differently.
So show me some examples of how it's being done differently, Ray.
Right here.
Okay.
Right here. You see this sign, tufting scrap carpet. Remember, there is no such thing as waste. This is food.
This carpet.
This carpet is food. Every bit of it will be recycled and made into good carpet, not scrap carpet. There's no such thing as waste.
And this used to go to the landfill.
This used to go to a landfill, exactly.
Forever.
20,000 years, we think.
Anderson likens the elimination of his company's environmental footprint to climbing a mountain.
Where are you in your climb up mountain sustainability
It's an
now?
interesting question because there are lots of faces to the mountain. And we have to climb every face, clear to the top. But as you look at the different faces of the mountain, waste elimination, emissions, energy, material flows, transportation, the whole culture shift that's necessary. When you look at all of these different faces of the mountain, we can say we're about halfway to the goal.
To go the distance, Anderson, his company executives, whom he calls the Eco Dream Team, and Interface's rank and file all adopted new methods of manufacturing, such as using methane gas generated from a landfill to cut natural gas usage, and powering equipment with solar energy. The company cut fossil fuel use by 45%, and their recycling efforts cut landfill use by nearly 80%.
We had one customer here who was walking through the factory and stopped a fork truck driver, stopped him right in the middle of the factory, and she said, "What do you do here?" And he said, "Ma'am, I come to work every day to help save the earth. What do you do?"
But saving the earth was just about the last thing on Anderson's mind in 1994, when a few employees had a green idea.
A group in our company came to me with the idea of creating a task force to bring people from our businesses around the world to come together and assess just what are we doing, and let's get some answers. So I said, "Sure, fine, go for it." And they said, "Well, we want you to come and speak to this task force and launch it with your environmental vision." I didn't have an environmental vision. And while I am really sweating, this book lands on my desk, The Ecology of Commerce by Paul Hawken. I've never heard of Paul Hawken. I don't know who he is or what this book is or anything about it, but I just pick it up and I began to thumb it. And within 50 pages, I was convicted as a plunderer of the earth.
It was a notion that Anderson says changed his life and the way he did business.
When you first came to your employees and said, "This is what we're going to do," how many of them were thinking, "Sheesh, we can't, how do we do this?" Because you were one of the first.
They were stunned, shocked, bewildered. They thought maybe I had gone round the bend, that I was losing my marbles. They really did. And one of the people in that group, I learned later, really changed the whole tide of their two-day discussion when he said, you know, I've made a lot of compromises in my business career. This is a chance to pay some of it back.
And while Ray Anderson is convinced his green methods of manufacturing are good for the environment, green is also the color of his ever-expanding bottom line.
You can still make money, a lot of money.
More money. It's a better way to make a bigger profit. The business case is crystal clear to us. Our costs are down, not up. Dispelling that myth that there's this choice between the environment and the economy. That is a false choice.
What have you done personally? You drive a Prius.
I do drive a Prius. I gave up a Jaguar for my Prius. I never looked back. I'm on my third Prius now. I had the first one in Georgia. I beat Ted Turner.
Apparently, all CEOs haven't had this epiphany that you have had. Why you? Why do you think it affected you?
After my two natural daughters, this is my baby. And from the beginning, it was a precocious child, you know. So like any good parent, I want my child to grow up to be all that it can be. And you know, when I realized the full magnitude of sustainability and what it meant, it was like deja vu. I had seen carpet tiles so right, so smart, 25, 30 years before. Here's this new thing, sustainability. So right, so smart. And what started out for us to be the right thing to do, you know, started here, very quickly became clearly the smart thing to do.
Do you think businesses are starting to get the picture and the idea slowly coming around?
Yeah, I think that, especially on global warming, that this conversation is going on in nearly every boardroom, not just in America, but around the world. You know, what are we going to do in our company about global warming? So if it's on the board's agenda, you can believe it's on the CEO's agenda.
So if there is a CEO watching today, what would be your message to that person?
When you meet your maker, what do you intend to talk about? Shareholder value? I don't think so. You know, what is your legacy going to be? What do you stand for?
And that's one question that Ray Anderson poses to business leaders in the hundreds of speeches he's called on to give each year. He suggests asking customers if they care about the environment. Business leaders are sometimes surprised by the positive answers they get, and many have already begun thinking of new ways to go green.
One other benefit from going green that Ray Anderson likes to point out, he says all the advertising in the world could never have gained his company the goodwill they've earned with investors, customers, with everybody, he says, for putting the environment first. Of course, that's so often the case with eco-friendly choices. They tend to be win-win. And your home can be the perfect example if you focus on your insulation. In today's Smart Science segment, our climate expert, Dr. Heidi Colin, says filling in the gaps can help stop money from leaking out.
Home, a place to kick back, relax, and I'm afraid pollute. The Department of Energy says that buildings of all kinds produce almost 1/3 of our greenhouse gas emissions, and they use up more than 1/3 of all of our energy.
Maybe you can't see all those greenhouse gases, but you sure can see your monthly energy bills, and odds are they're bigger than they need to be.
That's because a Harvard University study shows that 65% of American homes don't have enough insulation, which means that if you give your home an insulation upgrade, you get a double bonus. You slash your utility bills and you cut back on your greenhouse gas emissions.
This is true no matter what kind of climate you live in, hot or cold. That's because insulation is all about slowing down something called heat transfer. Heat transfer is a measure of how fast the heat leaves your house or comes into it, either one.
Think of it this way. This thermos holds iced tea and this thermos holds hot tea. Same exact thermoses, but very different internal temperatures. Whether it's hot or cold, the insulation acts to slow down the heat transfer. Problem is that most houses don't do a very good job of controlling heat transfer. They may have insulation in the walls, but they don't have it in the ceiling or under the floors, and they often let air in from the outside because they have gaps. So when you think about insulating your house, you almost need to think of it like you're wrapping the entire building in plastic wrap. It's not just the walls, it's the ceilings, it's the floors, it's all those air gaps. It's the whole thing. You only let air in and out in a controlled manner by installing vents like this one. And here's a happy coincidence. Some of the best insulating material on the market is environmentally friendly. This installer's applying something called cellulose into this house. Cellulose is actually just recycled cardboard and newspaper treated with a fire retardant. Also, cellulose is as good, if not better, than traditional glass fiber insulation at retaining heat, and it costs the same. There are other renewable materials being used to make insulation, like denim. It costs about the same as cellulose, and it's the exact same stuff that your blue jeans are made out of. There's also a foam that's made out of soybeans. Granted, it costs twice as much as cellulose. The Department of Energy says that properly insulating your home, whether it's in the chilly north or in the hot south, will cut your utility bills by roughly the same, an average of 20%. So if you beef up the insulation in your house, you'll not only save money, but you'll also do something good for the environment. How cool is that?
Here's another fun fact about insulation. Manufacturers estimate that during the first year that 1 pound of insulation is used, it saves about 12 times as much energy as it took to produce that pound of insulation.
Still to come, one family's dedication to the environment established the vision for the first ever Eco Manor. This story and more when Forecast Earth returns.